The Saints starting quarterback Sunday against the Kansas City Chiefs. Sources tell ESPN Saints believe he is fully healthy and doctors have cleared him to play. Again, this does not come as a huge surprise. Diana Rossini told us earlier that signs seem to be pointing towards it trending that way, but now it is official. And so, Diana, let me come to you again. Shefty just breaking this story moments ago. What more can you tell us?
I just got off the phone with a source in New Orleans, actually, while you guys were just having that conversation about this news. And I was told that Drew has had a really strong week at practice. It started on Monday afternoon with trainers. They didn't expect him to look as good as he did. But they said he's sharp, he's healthy. And we know with rib injuries, really basically with any major injury, it's not so much about the health on the field, it's the next day, dealing with that soreness. And while there is soreness there, and the source did make it very clear that Drew is not 100%, he's more in the 85-90% range, he's able to handle it. It's not something that's too overwhelming for Drew Brees. So collectively, we know this New Orleans Saints offense, they're better with Drew Brees here, and obviously really good news for them as we're going to see him return.
Let's remind everyone that the injuries were 11 broken ribs and a punctured lung. And Bart Scott, I can see the look on your face. You made this point earlier. You're worried about this. Tell everybody why.
Listen, because as a defender, that is a bullseye for me. I don't care. It's the cost of doing business. If this is a team that I may have to face in the Super Bowl, I'm going to make sure I do some damage. And I'm going to inflict as much damage as I can, especially early in the game, knowing that I have a great offense that can match them score for score. So he has a target on him. They're going to put some barbecue sauce on the ribs. And we're going to see if Drew Brees is about that smoke. 85% is not enough for me because I need him for the duration of the playoffs. I'm going to be targeting that. I'm going to fall on it. And if I get a fine, we'll have a pool for the FedEx. So I'll tell you what, Drew Brees better be ready because it doesn't care. If I have to take that extra step, we're going to take that extra step.
Look, I mean, the bottom line of it is it doesn't sound pretty to say it. But, RC, that is the reality of football, right? Those are serious injuries he's coming back from, and the defenders know that, and they'll go after it, right?
Hey, listen, I'm laughing because Bart is 100% correct. Unless the game has just changed that much since we were out. When you have a quarterback who's ailing or any player that's ailing, you want to be as physical as you possibly can be. And Drew Brees is going to be a guy who has a target on his back. They're going to understand that coming back from ribs is difficult. He'll obviously be exposed because he plays the quarterback position. And you watch Chris Jones and you watch this front get pressure on Tua Tagovailoa last week. They're going to try to do the same thing, get pressure in Drew's face and kind of make him get the ball out of his hands quickly to protect himself. And so I think all signs point to Kansas City bringing a lot of pressure this week and forcing Drew Brees to prove to us that those ribs are healed and he's not nervous or scared to be in that pocket.
Let me get my quarterback's perspective. Mark Sanchez, what do you think of this decision?
Yeah, I think it's dicey. These guys are both right. And knowing that as a quarterback, just like you said, your mentality shifts immediately. All right, how quickly can I get this ball out of my hands? How quickly can we get these blocking protections secured and get rid of this thing? Because like Bart said, like RC said, these guys are going to be falling on him, laying on him a little extra, rolling over a little extra, giving him a quick little jab. That's just the nature of the game.
Okay, let me take a very quick break on that thought. We will have much more. Again, the breaking news from Adam Schefter just moments ago. Drew Brees, after a 4-game absence, is coming back this weekend in a potential Super Bowl preview showdown against Kansas City. Back in just a moment. Get up on ESPN. Of the OT, that was a third down play. Touchdown would have ended the game. Instead, John Gruden's team kicks the field goal. They're up 27-24. They give the ball back to Justin Herbert, and the rookie took it from there. Look at this spectacular play. The long throw to Jalen Guyton, who's down inside the 5. Chargers with a chance. Again, a touchdown ends it. On second down, Herbert's going to sneak it. Wait, the ball comes out. If the Raiders recover, they win. Instead, the Chargers recover, but by rule, they can't advance it, so it just goes back. And on third down, this time, Herbert does get it in. Justin Herbert threw for 314 yards, 2 touchdowns, plus he runs for that one, and the Chargers deal a devastating blow to the Raiders' playoff chances. But Herbert is the story here, placing himself in elite company. He has 27 passing touchdowns on the season, tying Baker Mayfield for the most by a rookie ever, passing Peyton Manning and Russell Wilson, and of course, still has a few more weeks to break that record. Tomorrow, all the big games are in college football, and it will begin with the Big Ten game. Northwestern going up against Ohio State. Strength on strength. The Wildcats have the second best scoring defense. The Buckeyes have the fourth best scoring offense. The Big 12 game, it's Oklahoma against Iowa State. The Sooners lost this matchup earlier this year. They've gone 6-0 since. Oklahoma's won each of the last 4 Big 12 titles. The SEC game is Alabama-Florida. 10th time these two meet in this game, most frequent conference championship ever. Alabama's won 3 straight meetings. And in the ACC, Clemson and Notre Dame, the rematch, just the 4th time that 2 top 5 teams in the AP have met twice in the same season. In each of the previous 3, the loser of the first game wound up winning the rematch. And so let's take a look ahead to this one. Sanchez stays with us. And look who we have live from Atlanta getting set for the SEC championship game. Tim Tebow is with us as well. Great to see you, Tim. And let's start with the ACC game because so much depends on the outcome. Trevor Lawrence doesn't play the first time around, and Notre Dame gets the win in double overtime. How would you put into words how different this game is based on Lawrence being in it?
Listen, I think DJ Uiagalelei is a great talent, and he's going to be a great quarterback, but he does not even compare to where Trevor is right now. And that's not a knock on DJ. That is just saying it's hard to replace a quarterback that's taken your team to 2 national championships and won one of them. It's hard to replace what a lot of experts believe is the top prospect in the NFL draft. It's hard to replace that leadership, a guy that everyone trusts around you. And if you don't think that he's going to add 1 point, a game that went to overtime and Trevor Lawrence wouldn't add 1 point, then I don't think that you were really watching the game. I think Trevor Lawrence is a difference maker, and that's why I give Clemson the edge in this game.
It's a game that Clemson absolutely needs. How about you, Sanchez? How do you see it?
Yeah, I agree. The only thing, DJ Uiagalelei, he threw for 400 yards. He played his butt off. I think the 2 issues in that game were 2 kind of uncharacteristic plays by Clemson. You had the pitch and the fumble by Etienne, and then a fumble by Amari Rodgers that gave Notre Dame a ton of momentum. That really changed the landscape of the game, but Tim's totally right. Trevor adds this element of leadership, a guy who has so much experience, and I think these guys are just going to be calm and ready to jump out of their skin and beat up on Notre Dame.
So the overwhelming sentiment is that if Clemson wins this game, that both these teams wind up getting into the college football playoff and that Alabama is already in. That brings us to the game that you'll be covering tomorrow, Tim, and that's the SEC game. After Florida's really disappointing loss last weekend against LSU, if they pull off the upset tomorrow, do you give them a chance to wind up being in the football playoff?
Well, then I think you're really comparing them. There's a lot of stuff that can happen, but if you're just comparing them against A&M, 2 teams that would be competing to get in, is you would look at Florida and you would say, okay, you probably have the best win in the country against Bama, and you're the SEC champions, but you also probably have the worst loss of all the top teams competing to get in the playoff. Versus A&M, where your loss is a good one against Alabama, but you did beat Florida head-to-head. And so you really got to look and say, okay, you have head-to-head or you have a conference champion. And in my opinion, and I know Gator Nation is going to hate me for saying this, but the game's got to matter. And so I would probably vote head-to-head. I think some people are going to give more weight to the championship, and it is hard to win an SEC championship. It is incredibly hard, but I also think the game has to matter, so I would probably lean towards A&M, but you also want to see how the games are played. That's important as well.
How about you, Mark? If Florida wins that game tomorrow, the committee seemed to leave them in a spot that they could justify putting them in if they wanted to. That created a lot of controversy this week. If Florida wins tomorrow, do they get in?
I think you got to give them a shot. The only thing we're forgetting, what about the Pac-12? You said all the big games are tomorrow. What about the game tonight? USC, Oregon. Can we get some love out in the Pac-12 out west?
Well, let's talk about that.
Guys.
There are 2 things that I count on every Friday. 1, you're going to name a quarterback as the most important player in an NFL game. And 2, you're going to work USC into the conversation. A lot of people were talking about them before Tuesday. And then Tuesday night happened, and the committee gave them no love, so it doesn't feel like they have a realistic chance. Mark Sanchez, tell people why they should.
Well, listen, we're going to need complete chaos out here in the West, but essentially SC's got to win big. Some people call them the Fighting Reese Davises. For this episode, we're going to refer to them as the Fighting Mike Greenbergs, but Northwestern's got to upset Ohio State big. We're going to need Notre Dame to win and Clemson to be knocked out, and we're going to need Florida. Tim, you got to go give those guys a pep talk, man. Get those guys playing well in Florida, get them back on track and beating Alabama if they win big. That could be huge for my Trojans, but it's the epitome of a pipe dream.
Yeah, and look, I'm happy to do the pep talk for Northwestern. Tim, if you want to do yours for Florida. But give me a sense of just how good you feel about it all. There was so much talk coming out of what happened on Tuesday night, Tim, and people talking about whether they're paying too much attention to brand names and all of that. There have been a lot of thoughts. I'm dying to hear your perspective, Tim, on where we sit right now in college football.
Well, I think my emotions have been up and down with the committee this year. Is sometimes I think they've looked at brand names. I think sometimes they've looked at hype. I think where I sit is what is the definition, and let's hold ourselves to it. If it's the 4 best teams, let's really go by the 4 best teams. Let's not sometimes go deserving, sometimes go best, sometimes go brand name. Let's really go 4 best teams. Then you're not going to go deserving. You're not going to necessarily say conference champions. And I think there's a little bit of back and forth. In my opinion, in a year like this, I would have loved to have seen the playoff expanded to 8 teams to get more in. It's a crazy year. We've already made adjustments. Why not make another one, right? Why not give 4 more teams a chance to compete and maybe be able to pull off that amazing upset? I think that would have been the way I would have approached it. But I'm intrigued to see how this thing ends, because I really think if it's the 4 best teams, let's truly go for the 4 best, and let's not just go for conference champion or for most deserving, but truly the 4 best.
All right, Tim Tebow was there in Atlanta to cover the SEC game tomorrow, and he will be on First Take a little later this morning. It's great to see you again. Thank you, Tim. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we roll on here, and again, football conference championship weekend highlighted by this lineup. Again, Saturday on ABC, we have the Big 12 game, then we have Clemson and Notre Dame in the ACC, and then we have Tulsa, Cincinnati in the AAC, and then Sunday is when all is revealed, and you will see it on ESPN for the selection show, noon Eastern, and it's all on the ESPN app. Back to the NFL, either or on some of the big games this weekend. RC, Jalen Hurts or the Cardinals?